So this video was recorded immediately after the end of the last video when I was trying to get the time shifting working. Originally, I reached out to Lance at Victron to say, hey, I'm struggling with this, can you help me? I figured it out just before we started talking, so instead of being more of a, hey, help me with this, which is what I told him it was going to be, it ended up becoming me rather frustrated, kind of grilling him at times on Victron software in particular. In hindsight, I feel a bit bad for that because I'm kind of a little blunt, more blunt than I would like to be. But Lance is very gracious. He was very patient with my questions. He does answer them at the end of the video, which I'm going to create a third video, which is going to be a very concise, to the point, how you set up load shifting, time shifting, whichever you like to call it. This video is going to be effectively our full conversation with just a few cleanup edits just to make it flow a bit better. So this is going to be a video more about Victron as a company, their approach to software development, hardware development, their priorities, and so forth. It was not what I expected this conversation to turn into, but I found it to be really insightful, and I want to share it with you guys. Secondly, so with the kitty interludes becoming sort of an unexpected thing on my videos, I thought I should share with you guys that Lynx, the whitish gray kitty that you've seen in the past, he passed away a few hours after the last video I finished filming. It's part of the reason why it's taken me a little bit, because yeah, that kind of hurt. He was 17 years old, just over. I've had him with me for 15 years of that, so that was a bit of a kick. But when we bring an animal into our lives, we sign up for that. So he had a good life. I miss him dearly, but onward we go. This little shit always takes my seat, and then look. Come on, buddy, it's my seat. Come on, it's my seat. But it's my seat. Well, I want my seat back. You don't pay rent, so you don't get to pick your seats. Come on, buddy. There we go. Thank you. Huh? I would say, do you hate me now? But you're a cat. You always hate me. Crotchety old man. So if I can ask, one of the things I was noticing is that when I was setting up the drivers for this in Windows,
Yep.
it was in, I want to say RFID, and that's the thingies. FTDI
Yep.
chip, which is a standard serial to USB adapter.
Yeah.
So I thought, I know I use FTDI for my standard RS-232 to USB adapter,
Yep.
which works in Linux. So I plugged it in. I saw a dev TTY USB 0 show up, and I tried talking to it. And when I tried it at the default 2400 baud, I was getting line noise. So I killed it and tried it at 115/200, and I was
Yeah.
getting no line noise, but I was getting no feedback. Is it possible? Is there an API, anything published that would allow somebody who had the wherewithal to directly talk to the Quattro? Or does it have to go through VE configure?
No, it's got to go through the MK3.
Oh, the MK3, yes, but the MK3 is fundamentally just a USB to serial adapter, right?
It is. It is a little bit of a black box.
Okay, and on purpose. All right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so
There is.
much for that.
So
Any further efforts, you're into reverse engineering territory, and
Yeah,
that's not my
yeah.
bag, baby. All right, so we'll set that aside.
So there are ways to talk to those, and because um, you can pull out some of that stuff, but um, typically you've got to have some sort of like some sort of Venus device attached to it as well.
Okay,
So meaning the Cerbo or the color controller or something else like that, and then you can use that in kind of in lieu of. But you are the MK3 is a little more than just a converter, so it was purposefully designed that way.
okay, so that's actually not a question I was planning to ask, but with
Okay.
the Venus OS, which is running on a Raspberry Pi, if you can find one these days, uh,
Yeah.
that's
Surprise,
Linux.
hey?
That's a Debian box. And
Yeah.
there is a, oh, I guess this goes into proprietary code because the VE bus cable goes into the Cerbo GX, which again is effectively, I don't know if it's
Uh,
fundamentally RS-232 or RS-485 plus plus, but it's fundamentally a serial bus.
yeah.
So that's a Linux machine that
But
can.
it's there. I mean, we that the Venus OS is available. It's open
Yes, it is.
source.
Yeah, it is. It's
Um,
so what I was wondering
so
is if I can root into or if I can get shell access. Well, period. I can't run VE configure from Linux or Mac OS for that matter. It's a
that's
Windows
true. You can.
only
Yeah.
tool. I wonder then is how hard is it and why isn't it possible to configure from say Linux if there's obviously the software is written behind the scenes because the Venus OS is fundamentally running on Linux. So you must be able to run
Most
it on
likely
Linux.
because we set it up on that, and we're not spending any more time or uh, basically financial energy
Ah,
on
so it's a
changing
support
it.
issue. It's not that there's a technical block to support Linux, it's
No,
that there's too many
it's
flavors of Linux and you don't want to take on the support liability.
that's right. So the
Okay, I
same
get that.
you see the same with people have asked us about the Bluetooth, and no, we're not opening the Bluetooth up because the same issue.
So it's
It's way
yeah,
too much
it's
support,
not that you're trying to
and
protect it, it's just you have limited support resources and you don't want to spread them
yeah,
thin. Okay, no, I can
yeah,
get that.
and as you saw at the training, we're a pretty lean company, and the quite honestly, a lot of the resources in the last 2 years because of COVID have been spent on getting new components for existing
Oh,
products, which is same reason why you're having trouble finding a Raspberry Pi or anything like that is because all those chips are becoming very hard to find, and so a lot of besides the software, a lot of the technical support system in Victron it's been going after redesigning that,
so you're trying to
so that we stay
redesign
on
to
top of
be less dependent on any particular chip vendor.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, be more agnostic. I mean, a lot of these things we're talking about small chips and we have good relationships with our chip vendors, but basically down to diodes and FETs and things like that. Some of them have just gone
Gone.
disappeared, and it's we had a meeting in LA at the at Intersolar, and Matthias was like, yeah, we just you know, the line literally stops because
You run out of chips, there's nothing to put on the pick and place machine.
yeah, that's been a lot. So, and that's sort of halted or slowed the progress on a bunch of other new stuff that's been coming out. So, but we're, Victron still has lots of stuff in stock, so that's a good
So
thing.
the takeaway from my question of
Yeah,
why do I need to have a Windows computer to configure a VE configure or to run VE configure is despite the fact that Venus OS is Linux is Venus OS is a set platform, Windows is a set platform, it's a minimal support for
yeah,
maximal users. Most people have access to Windows. Boohoo
yeah,
people like me.
and 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 along with that is us uh, upgrading Victron Connect all the time, so that for these simple systems you will be and simple. I'm still meaning like uh, retail systems as opposed to big industrial systems. Victron Connect will be able to do all those things, and as Mac or as Apple changes how you interconnect with them. Hopefully, be able to use iOS as well.
So, one of the things I noticed when I was trying to figure out how to get this time shifting going was that I had to use the VE configure after the firmware update to set the amperage limits. Same thing when I first got it. When I tried
Yeah.
to use the phone, I was setting the values and they just weren't taking. So I went over to the VE Connect and then it started working. Is the plan to always need the VE configure to do some of these more advanced features? And if so, does that mean everyone who wants to be able to configure their system has to keep a Windows machine around?
So our plan currently is that the larger complex systems will continue to need to have a VE configure, whether it's VE bus, uh, system configurator, or just VE configure. Those items will still, those systems will still need that. What we're trying to do is port more of our VE configure into Victron Connect so that retail systems, customers with up to, at the moment, 3 units, can find all those items basically in Victron Connect. And in doing that, as you can see, we can already do it with a Windows laptop. We can do it with Android. We can't yet do it with iOS, but that will change in the future as iOS changes a little bit. You'll also notice that people are always asking, well, why can't you spend all this time just developing that? And we have a limited amount of resources that we are willing to spend to these particular items. And at the moment, we're spending our resources developing new products and making our other software and firmware better. So while we're still working on that, we still have to progress as a company. So some of these things get left a little behind. You'll notice on a Windows machine, if you're using Victron Connect, the Bluetooth doesn't work.
I did
It's
notice
just,
that now that you mention
yeah.
that,
So
not just recently,
we have
but
this
when I
give and
was first
take,
trying
right?
to okay. So
So we're so that can probably be fixed in the future at some point. But once again, it Victron's a very lean company, and we have to prioritize where we're spending our resource money. And at the moment, that's not high on the priority list.
okay.
So I get a lot of questions. Why can't you spend some time and do that? It takes resources away from other things that we're trying to develop and other jobs that are higher on the priority list.
Something I don't know if I said in the video before this, but I'm going to say now in case I didn't, and that is that it's been a common experience of mine that generally speaking, the better the hardware quality, the crappier the software. And I think in a much more diplomatic way, you're kind of saying that, look, we're a relatively small company considering your global reach. If you have to choose between letting the software lag or letting the hardware lag, your focus stays on the hardware. So good hardware, suck it up on the software.
Well,
To be a little blunt about it.
a little blunt about it, but yes, the hardware, we have a set of hardware developers that work on firmware, and then we have a set of software developers that are working on Victron Connect and those things. So, and Victron Connect, as you know, needs as we do new firmware, we need to integrate it into Victron Connect because Victron Connect has all that latest firmware in it. So that's a really full-time job for a bunch of people. And so, and don't forget our global climate where components have been harder to get. So some of our resources have to go to sourcing new components. So we're getting in this
And
thing where,
redesigning your designs
once
to
again,
work with those new components.
yeah. So we're always, you'll notice that Victron Connect is always getting better. We're always adding new features to it. And there is a priority list. And so as it's on the priority list. It's just not at the top of the priority list at the moment. But as we get other things fixed and finished, then obviously that list changes. Or mostly Matthias and Reinhardt are really good about this. They start what's at the top of the list is at the top of the list until it's finished.
Okay.
And it's not like Other things get shoved on top of it. It is a fluid list, but yeah, if it's on the top of the list, that's what we're working on. Unfortunately, at the moment, um, this stuff is being worked on, but it's just not high on the priority list. So, uh, so we're when we put out a new version of Victron Connect, you'll notice that we were talking earlier about some things not working, and it was a bug. And when these things go out and you test them, all these go out in beta testing. If people are interested, they can get on and do beta testing. With Are you beta testing?
No, I'm not. And sorry, I don't want to cut you off because I don't want you to lose your
No.
train of thought by derailing it. But
Yeah.
remind me to ask questions about beta testing and bug reporting, feature requests.
Yeah.
Finish your thought though first.
Yeah. So when we let something out like that and we beta test it, maybe we're beta testing with thousands of people. All of a sudden, it's got 10,000 people using it. Now we can bugs go by. Everybody has them. So
I'm a software
you're,
developer.
You're a software.
I'm sitting here. I'm like, how do I not sound like I'm just being a ass kisser to Victron, but at the same time show that, yeah, dude, I get it.
Yeah.
We're building a new CI/CD infrastructure specifically to test our code. Let me use that then to segue into what I wanted to just ask. Obviously, you're a closed source company, as most are. I mention that because I come from an open source world where everything is public. So I ask and have a lot of assumptions, and I'm sure some of the viewers do as well. I'm sure a lot of the viewers work in closed source companies. In the open source world, the testing infrastructure is public. Not necessarily the tests, but at least the test results. And usually this is all linked together through some sort of common development interface where you have something like Jenkins for CI/CD, you'd have something like GitHub or GitLab for bug reporting, feature requests. Obviously, again, your own software development is going to be behind the scenes. Is there a public component? I know you have an entire section on your website that's like Victron and open source, which is one of the reasons as a Linux user I chose Victron. Do you have an open source or an open, sorry, I shouldn't say open source. Do you have an open part of your site where more advanced users who are interested in joining the bug program, which I want you to talk about after this, is there a place where people could report bugs that they found, do feature requests, leave comments on existing feature requests so that when you're trying to figure out your priority list, is there any way for the user base to provide input / influence that list so you get a feel for what the community is feeling as what should be the priority? Sorry,
absolutely.
That was a lot.
A lot of our development has come from that, and one of the best ways to get into that is go to the Victron community, and then you'll see on the Victron community there's the general questions, and then there's the modifications, and you can get into that. And if you're looking through there, you'll notice that a lot of especially when you get into the modification side, you'll see a lot of answers from our staff directly.
Okay.
And sometimes answers from Matthias.
No,
so you'll notice on there every now and then, quite often you'll get an expert answer and it'll say from Matthias, and he's, they're continually looking at that. We're also, the Venus OS is available on GitHub.
Really?
Yeah, so, it's in there.
What about the VE Connect? Could you file bug reports on the Venus?
You know what? I haven't played with it.
Okay.
I haven't looked. As you know, I started about 9 months ago.
And
directly working for Victron, so
I asked you to chat specifically about time shifting, and this has turned into a whole slew of questions that have nothing to do with time shifting. So I put you on the spot. I'm sorry if I
don't
worry about it.
You can't answer something. I mean, this is we finally finished this tour, and so I get some time at home and play around a little bit more. But it is there. I'm not sure if it's GitHub /Venus OS or if it's GitHub /Victron. You can have a look, but it is there and available.
This is where Google comes in. Venus Energy is so Victron Energy is the project company, and then you have Venus as a sub project. You have Venus HTML5 app, Venus Docker Grafana, Node-RED contribute Victron. Dbus, Modbus, TCP. Okay, so you have a fair bit of code here. I
Yeah.
see Venus, Victron Press. Yeah, you've got a fair number of things here. I'll put a
Yeah.
link in the description below. I love saying that. It makes me feel like a YouTuber. Um, okay, so I will provide a link to
There
that.
is, and this is, I come from the installer side. That's my background. Hands on putting this stuff in boats and motorhomes and things like that. Um, so I'm bringing myself up to your level a little bit. Well, barely this much.
Dude, when it comes to the
As
Victrons,
it
if
goes.
you want a high availability cluster built, I'm your girl. When
Okay.
it comes to this battery stuff, you're less new than me. I started this, what,
Yeah.
6 months ago?
Yeah.
So, yeah, no competition there.
Yeah. Yeah. So that software's there, and that is all open. We talked before in the last one. You're not going to have it in. We're not going to open up our Bluetooth.
No,
It
understandable.
requires way too much support.
Of the number of
And
questions and feature requests you have coming in, yeah, no,
yeah,
I'm a
so
developer.
yeah,
Yeah, I get
so
it.
uh, that will be proprietary.
So
But these other ones, and so a lot of and as you see, Modbus, it's especially in industry, because Modbus is so prevalent. It was very important for our Venus software to work with that. So and it does. I have some customers that are that use that. That's how they monitor and manipulate the systems. And the nice thing is they can use it to integrate some Victron stuff with some other stuff. So they can control a whole great big system under their own APIs and protocols. So it's yeah, it's pretty cool.
Okay, so I don't want to beat this thing to death. I'm going to leave it there. The
Okay.
takeaway, just to summarize it, is any issues, check to see if it's an application that is on the GitHub, and if there is, you can file a bug report or a feature request there.
Yeah.
Anything
Or
else?
Victron community.
That's what I was going to
So
say. So anything else that's not there, post on the Victron community or search through the
yeah,
Victron community.
yeah,
If
yeah.
you
If you
find a
get it on the
bug or have an
Victron
issue.
community, you're going to find, like I say, Matthias and a whole bunch of our staff are on there all the time. So
Yeah,
it's
it's fairly well
and quite
responsive.
honestly, a lot of what we do with Victron Connect and with the different you'll notice in different assistants and things like that in VE Configure, they've come from the community. It used to be Victron Live, now it's Victron Community.
Yeah.
So it's come from that. It's our users that typically say, "Hey, how about this?" And I've seen stuff that's turned around in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Somebody said, "Hey, have you thought of this?" And a
If
couple
it's a
of
good idea, it gets implemented. Well, I
it's
know.
like, "Hey, we can do this." Bang.
I know Andy at Off Grid Garage.
Yeah.
He's a friend of mine, and he had an issue with some of your software, and somebody said like, "Here's an unreleased version of the firmware. Do you want to test it?" And he was like, "Okay." He
Yeah.
comes from an
So
IT background as well, so yeah.
and same thing. So there's beta testing. You've got to go in through Victron Community or Victron Professional and sort of ask to become a beta tester. And there's beta testing for Victron Connect and for also for the Venus software. So if you want to play with that, what we always say is don't use beta
In
versions for system for crucial systems.
The
Anything they have bugs and
Yeah.
they can have. So don't use something that we know is stable because that's why we beta test. So
there's a saying I heard in the IT world. I come from a sysadmin background, and it said everybody has a test platform. Some people are lucky enough to have a separate production platform.
yeah.
So
So
don't. The difference with a computer is you crash your software. With your stuff,
you
could
we've
potentially
had
have a very bad and expensive day because I
yeah.
mean, you're directly tying into fairly expensive and large
Yeah,
energy
we've
storage
had
systems.
hotels go out. We've had utility repeater stations
Yeah,
fail.
recognize that you are running on beta and treat it accordingly. So, being Canadian and
Yep.
the majority of, I was going to say my viewers, but really the majority of most YouTube viewers being American, when I was going in to set up the country code, which I'll ask again in a minute or so, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I believe I had to enable a country code in order to set up time shifting, which was the whole goal of this. I noticed there was no Canada country code and there was no America country code. There was like Australia and a bunch of
Yeah.
European countries, and that was about it. So, can you, like, is there a download we can add a Canadian grid code? I mean, I used other and it worked. Help
There
me understand that.
current yeah, currently there are no North American grid codes because they haven't been passed. We in Canada, it's kind of nice because we have the Utilities Commission and we have provincial utilities. So we don't have a whole lot of utilities. There are no grid codes in there, but in Canada, if you go through the electrical code and your local codes, you can do grid tie, provided the utility allows for it. I know here in BC you can, but you have to make sure that there's proper anti-islanding devices in line to ensure that if there is a power outage, that there's no way that alignment can
Be
be injured
shocked
or yeah, because that, I mean, we can literally backfeed the whole. Your system can backfeed enough to kill somebody,
easily.
especially if it goes back into the transformer, then gets reverse transformed. And now we
I
have,
Yeah,
yeah,
20,000 volts. And I want to. I mentioned
the
this when I
US is
was.
even more difficult because they have private utilities, and how they're allowing people to connect to them is location
Wild.
by location.
Yeah.
It's and states are changing the laws continually. So
So the chances of America having a grid code is not likely anytime soon, just because there's
I
too
don't
much
think it's.
variability.
I mean, it would be nice to see a grid code for them, but depending on how the grids are managed,
You would have
they
to have
have
like one almost for every state.
uh, how about a few for every state? Because I know when I was in um,
California has two, don't they?
California, you can be in San Diego and you could have two or three different utilities that could be supplying you. Um,
And I know
so
one of our customers down in the States, they actually have feeds from two different grid companies for redundancy to power their factories. And then what do you do?
yeah,
How do you set up two grid? Yeah, I can see it
yeah.
getting too crazy too
So
quickly.
so that's a lot with ESS and net metering and things like that, which um, I really hope comes along. The Europe is it's all over the place in Europe. That's why you see Germany and Holland and or the Netherlands, France, and they all have country codes. Australia, um, because they know that using when you have excess power, they can use it.
Yeah.
So
And I
uh,
suppose proximity to Victron head office helps get the attention of taking the time. Again, it comes back to the relatively limited tech resources. How do you invest it? I'm assuming
and
being a European country, it makes sense that you can see the justification to put the
yeah,
time in to come up with the grid codes there.
yeah, and look at the density there
Yeah,
that isn't here. I mean, we
yeah.
are, my colleagues or even, you know, look at Canada, right? Here you and I are talking, and well,
Three time
people would
zones
say
apart.
we're thinking. People are thinking, oh, well, yeah, well, one's in Ontario, one's in BC, but
That's like
and that
6,000 kilometers.
and that's not even the whole width of the country,
No, it's not.
right? I mean,
Canada's
go,
big.
go
To
to
anyone
Newfoundland.
watching that is not a Canadian, you need to
Yeah,
understand Canada is huge.
yeah, yeah.
It's I think like a
Leaving
4 or 5 hour flight
Toronto
to
is
go
another
to
2.5 hours
Vancouver.
just to get to the end of. Yeah,
Yep.
so it's having that much distance in between the density
Your
moved out.
population
Um,
density is basically a sponge. It's
yeah,
mostly air.
yeah. And if you look at, for example, if you look at our where to buy and the little blue dots that are on it, pull up Europe and see how many.
It's just a blue blob.
It's just a big blue bob. Yeah. So
So it makes sense.
yeah,
I
yeah,
want to I want to highlight something that I mentioned when offhandedly when I was working on
yeah,
this myself, trying to figure this out last night, and you mentioned and you actually used blunt language. You could kill somebody. I want to
yeah,
underline that so people understand what we're dealing with here when you're
yeah,
configuring the Quattro. With these lithium ion batteries feeding back into the grid, it's
yeah,
not just the 120 or the 128 volts. it's a lot of amps. So you said you pump it through one of these transformers. Transformers work in both directions. So that's
Yeah,
16,000 volts that gets stepped down to 280 or 240.
yeah,
The 240 or the 120 going into it can just as easily be stepped up to those thousands of volts. And yes, it's not the volts that killed the amps, but just look at the T-class fuse I blew to hell when I shorted out my
yeah,
battery, right? Like we're dealing with kiloamps with these
yeah,
packs. And it is
yeah,
important that anybody who's seeing this video who's trying to do this backfeed to the grid is not a trivial issue. This isn't, oh, just have to meet some red tape. No, you can kill somebody. Period. Full
yeah,
stop. So
yeah.
that wasn't a question. I just wanted.
No, that it and I know for example in the Quattros, they have a single relay in them for transfer relay, um, and now in Canada and the U.S. they'll need to. That's where the Quattro 2 is going to come out, or it is on its way out.
I was going
You
to
have
ask
to have
about
a
that.
yeah. It has a redundant transfer relay in it,
Oh,
which is
so you need the
what's
code where you have to have redundant.
yeah.
Okay.
So part of that country code is what the machine has in it itself as well, right? So the country code that a Quattro by itself doesn't qualify. It needs to have a redundant transfer switch, which is another anti-islanding device that's as we talked about earlier. So you need to have a redundant one so that when there is no power monitored from the grid, not only does that transfer switch close in the Quattro, but
It sends a
also a
message.
separate one that in case one or the other fails,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So
So
you
the
have
the
to,
other anti-islanding would basically say, I see no input voltage, cut it off, totally independent of what the Quattro might do.
yeah,
So there's
yeah.
no communication lines. It's just simply
No,
it senses the input
it's
voltage and shuts it.
yeah. So you have to have that, and it's the same. Even if you have a generator on your house,
Yes,
a backup generator, same thing. You have to have
an
two.
anti-alien.
You have to have two. It has to. You have to have a redundant one.
So even with the
Uh,
Quattro 2, where you have the two relays, that's for your own internal redundancy, but it still doesn't meet code. You
you're
still have to
probably
have an
going to need
external.
that. Will yeah. We'll see how that all folds out, because of course all these things have to go through certification. Um, but one of the things is that we need to have that double redundancy.
So
Um, so let's back to that. It's life safety.
it is life safety.
Please follow
It
follow the
cannot.
guidelines.
This is
That's why those regulations are there. It's to save people's lives.
it's very common in the DIY community, and I'm guilty of this myself, to think, oh well, those the clipboard warriors, right? Yeah, I ain't gonna check everything. I'm gonna have to fuck off, right? Like, but no, there are some times where, yeah, you really can kill somebody, and this is
Yeah,
one of those situations.
yeah,
So,
it is.
with that said, I had avoided entering a country code up until now because I'm like, I never want to feed back to the grid. I don't want there to be even the programmatic possibility of this
Yeah,
feeding back to the grid. But when I was trying to figure this out for myself, it looked like I had to enable a grid code, even though I just set it to other, excuse me, in order to do time shifting, load shifting, whatever you want to call it, where it'll
yeah,
only draw from the AC depending on the time of day, or the state of charge drops below a certain amount. So in my particular case, I want my highest tariffs are between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. So I have it stop charging at 6:45 and start charging at 7:15, unless the state of charge hits 10% or the voltage drops to 42, 43 volts, something like that, like nearly dead, and then it kicks
yeah.
in. Did I have to set a country code in order to do that, or could I have done that without it?
You could actually you could use you could integrate. Are you using a Cerbo or a color controller?
I'm using a Cerbo GX with the
Okay,
the the screen.
so you could integrate either Grafana or Node Red.
I haven't played
Uh,
with that yet, but that is on my list of things to do.
so that's a really trick way to do it because not only that, then you can start using. I played this much, actually about this much with Node Red.
That's
What
I've done zero
two?
so far.
Yeah, two of my colleagues in Europe use it extensively for their ESS system. Um, one in France, and he pulls in. It's amazing. He pulls in meteorological data, so weather forecasting for the next 3 days. And he sets up, because Node-RED is just a flowchart programming.
Yeah.
So he just sets up that and says if the weather's going to be bad in the next 3 days, we're going
Charge
to
all the
charge
way.
our batteries all the way up. And he does all that. And then because they too have different times for their tariffs, energy tariffs, then it's all programmed for that. And also looking at obvious states of charge, because sometimes you've got to
Yeah,
got to
price be
draw
damned. If
power
you're
in.
going to go down, it's time to charge.
Yeah. So you can definitely do it with that. With the you can start to do a little more with the Cerbo, getting into using its ESS instead of using the because there's an ESS system on the Cerbo as well.
Okay, so I'm trying to remember what I did last night. I can't remember if I
You were
used
doing
the
ESS on. You would have been doing it if you're doing it VE configure. You're doing it in as an assistant.
Yes, I think I was
Basically,
doing it
it's a
as an
great big
assistant.
assistant
I
on
did
the.
this last night. You think I'd remember, but I'll have to
No,
look at it.
and that assistant.
And that's what required the country code then.
That's right. That
Okay.
assistant requires a country code, and you've got a lot of stuff going on in there. A lot of that, once again, that this is sort of our move to make it easier for people. Victron Connect and getting it onto the Venus OS as opposed to being in the actual inverter, and that also starts to enable us to look at other products integration, right? So solar charge controllers, because now we can look at them, what they're doing with the Venus OS. We can see what's happening, and so we instead of the Venus whether it's a Venus color controller or a Cerbo, instead of it sort of being passive and just monitoring, it can actually it's starting to be more active, interactive and active. So it's actually doing things as opposed to just letting you know what's happening. So we were talking earlier about, where are we putting software and development? Well, that's
one of them.
That's higher up on the list than making us work with an iPad or an iPhone, unfortunately.
So the takeaway was, if I want to make this system as safe as possible, if there's no country code, the Quattro will never backfeed to the grid, period, right?
That's right. Without a country code, none of the multis or the Quattros or even the big Phoenix inverters, which don't do it anyways, but they don't feed back. But there is, because they have a pass through, they will not allow power to go the other way without a country code.
Now,
so
if I've included a country code, what can I do? Is there a switch I can set somewhere that says never backfeed, period, full stop? How do I make sure, and I'm actually going to...
There is...
pull up my stuff here and make sure I've done
this. I was actually looking at this the other night when with our emails. It's like, okay, so I better make sure I know what the answer is.
Maddie's going to be annoying. I've got to know what she's going to...
And yes, there is, when you go through the ESS assistant, there is one button in there that is do not backfeed.
Port select, COM port, auto detect.
Yeah, so you're going to go here. I'm going to play with my other computer too, because once again,
I would screen share, but wrong computer. If you supported Mac, I'd plug into that.
I know.
Sorry, just a little zinger there.
Yeah, no, so you can play around with, and anybody can do this, right? Exactly what we're doing.
Okay, this is about to happen again, and I had this happen a few times last night. I've got the MK3 plugged in directly to the USB. I went to targets. I saw the COM port listed there, COM6. I hit connect, or I did auto detect, and it didn't work. I've had it repeatedly. I do a scan, and it doesn't find it. And this
you know why? Because you have your Cerbo plugged in.
I unplugged so right now I've got the MK3 going to the USB and the USB going to the Windows computer. This is not going through the Cerbo right now. I'm directly talking to the Quattro.
But is the Quattro attached? What else is attached to your Quattro?
Nothing. It's a Terminator on the Quattro, and it goes straight into the MK3.
There's a Terminator on your Quattro?
Yeah, when you're using the VE bus, you have to put a Terminator on the second board.
No, pull that out. That's your problem.
I thought you had to put a Terminator on...
VE CAN is terminated. VE bus is not terminated.
Wait, which one does the Quattro have?
bus.
So I
Pull your Terminator off. That's it. One moment, please.
one moment, please. Technical difficulties.
Yeah, pull your Terminator off there.
So it sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. Is that expected then?
Yeah.
So
So I think that's what you're playing with.
So I had a Terminator on the Cerbo GX. I should take that off as well?
Yes. Yeah.
So no
It only
Terminators
goes.
at all.
It only goes on the VE CAN, which is a CAN bus. So it's a VE CAN, Victron Energy CAN bus. So it's got some of
it. Needs it. VE bus does not.
VE bus does not have a Terminator.
All right.
Okay, and I'm just playing with the resistor here.
No more resistors. Remember I asked you about the resistor rating when I was in Vancouver?
Yeah.
That's why, because I thought I needed them. And I'm like, oh, well, what if I ever lose these? Do I have to go out and buy them? And, you know, can I just fix it on my boat? I don't even need to worry about it. What uses VE CAN then?
VE CAN are big MPPT controllers. So like things that are 100, 150, I think they start at 45s, maybe 60s. And those, and then all the way up to the 250, 100s. The Skyla, our Linux Shunt, and our Linux BMS. So those are things that use VE CAN. And the nice thing about CAN is we can put more items on it. So you can have up to 25 items on a VE CAN system.
Okay.
The Victron.
It's not detecting it again.
No?
No, when it detects it, it's within 2 or 3 dots, it picks it up.
It's a Windows machine. Just bang it on the floor a few times.
If this wasn't also my main Linux computer, I probably would have put my fist through the screen last night. Okay, so the Terminators are out on both sides. There's no Terminators. Yeah, I've got an RJ45 going from the Mark III to whichever the port
Quattro.
was.
Nothing else is connected to the Quattro.
Nothing else is connected.
You might have to cycle your Quattro once.
And this is why I don't power any of my camera or laptops off my batteries yet.
Yeah, that's okay.
Should I unplug and plug back in the MK3 as well?
Yeah, probably a good idea.
Okay, so with this up, I'm going to unplug it, and I should see COM6 disappear. COM6 is gone. Plug it back in. How does it feel to be a tech support again? Unplug it and plug it back in to turn it off and turn it back on, please.
Just like every single cable, every router. Have you unplugged it? Have you reset it?
Funny story, I was down in Vegas once, and we were waiting to fly back. Okay, found it. And we were supposed to push back, I don't know, say 2:15, it doesn't matter what time it was. And 2:20 rolls around, and the captain comes on and says, you know, we're just having some technical difficulty. We'll be a few more minutes. And I swear to God, a van drives up beside the airplane, so I always get a window seat, and it said, like, American Airlines tech support. And I was just like, being in IT, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cute.
Yeah.
About 5 minutes later, the whole plane shuts down. Air conditioning shuts down, lights turn off, everything for like about 5 seconds, and then everything comes back on. And a couple minutes later, the captain comes on the PA system and goes, you know sometimes how you have to just turn it off and back on again? That applies to planes too. We should be pushing back in a moment.
Hopefully they don't have to do that in the air.
That was a moment where I'm like, everything's just a computer. We've reached that stage in life where everything is a computer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the first question, which I asked before and you've already answered, was, do I need ESS to set up time shifting, which is the focus of this current video? And the answer was no, but then I would have to use Code Red or Node Red, or something, which I'm not doing yet. So in the structure of this article, or this video, which is purely within the Victron ecosystem, in order to set up time of use based charging, I have to use ESS.
You've got to use, so the issue with, think of it this way, that the Quattro itself doesn't have a clock in it.
No, it doesn't, but the Cerbo does.
That Cerbo does. So you've got to use something that is doing that timing for you.
Yeah.
Which
No, I know the Quattro has a very basic brain in it.
Yeah.
Brief
So
tangent. Will the Quattro 2 be a lot more advanced? I
in
saw the
what
Quattro 2s
way?
out in Europe. Like, will it have, instead of just using the VE bus, will it have Bluetooth? Will it use the VE direct cables? Will it have its own
It
internal
won't.
time source and processor?
So one of the reasons why we use VE bus and we still have the other two protocols is because VE bus is only dealing with AC.
Okay.
The others protocols deal with a multitude of different things. And so VE bus is we don't want any interference with that, because you can imagine having three, or put it this way, you can imagine having 18 quattros
Mm-hmm.
stacked together, um, which if we're using 5,000s we could do. And if there's some information that goes askew in that, then we could have basically fires, lots of smoke, because we have to make sure everything is stays in its proper frequency range. So all the frequency, all the sine wave shifts, and all the voltage.
So
So
VE bus is more industrial, whereas you start layering on Bluetooth and all these other things, and you're kind of entering into the consumer world, and things can go a little bit kitty
and
wonkus.
Bluetooth, as you know, as a developer, is unreliable.
There's
Um,
there's a reason why everything I'm doing is going to have a hardwire when I get on my boat.
Yeah, and I can tell you from experience that I've seen um, boat owners where they're going, "Hey, this Bluetooth is great. I've got all this stuff on my," and
It's
then they
great when it
leave the dock.
works.
They leave the dock, and all of a sudden they come back to the dock and say, "Hey, I can't see this stuff on my Bluetooth anymore."
Because you've got
And the reason
1,500 other boats all with pushing their own microwaves and Wi-Fi and
that, and
Bluetooth, and you just congest the radio waves.
yeah, somebody shut the engine room door,
Or somebody shut the engine room door on metal boats.
and
Yes.
guess what?
Faraday
Now we've got
cage.
this nice Faraday cage, and guess what's happening? The Bluetooth isn't coming out of that. So
Yeah.
a lot of those things are very, that to us is extremely important. Like, it's top shelf important. And so we
So
make
for
sure that
big
none of
system
that.
stuff, don't even offer it so people don't get trapped into thinking it's working and then catch themselves
Yeah.
at always the worst
Yeah.
time that it's not working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so
So Bluetooth is really good for all those. It's for all those retail
your
it's for
MPPT
us.
blues, smart
Yeah.
blues, and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, but for
Yeah.
when you
And
get by the
so,
time you get to a Quattro, you're at a big enough system.
and we do have quattros and multis that are smart, that have a Bluetooth. But basically, what you're going to see is you're going to be looking at, it's not it's information for you. It's not information that it needs to share with other
Absolutely not
devices to
critical
make
with the
sure everything's
system.
working.
It's not like the MPPTs where they start talking to each other and they talk to the server. All of that
Yeah,
nicety doesn't exist and
yeah.
will not exist with the Quattro 2s. Release schedules. Did you just release a product as soon as it's ready, or do you sort of batch a bunch of products and have like an annual release of new products?
Um, no, we're releasing as they become available.
Okay. The
So
reason
we
I
do
was,
have, yeah.
what's coming in the Quattro 2? You know, why, if I'm a Quattro 1 owner, would I want to upgrade to the Quattro 2? If I need a system now, should I buy the Quattro 1 or wait for the Quattro 2? Like, what are the feature benefits?
Well,
Um,
the Quattro. So one of the things will be the dual transfer switch
yeah,
in it, and you'll notice that if you look at our product list lineup, the the setup in them is slightly different. So how everything connects into the bottom of them, we've gone depending on how big it is. It could have clam lock or cam lock wire holders or wire connectors. And things like that. So there's some subtle differences. The topography of them is the same, meaning that they're both working the same way. Big toroidal coil. They're low
which are heavy
frequency.
as
Yeah, they are. Yeah, and you've got a light one
yes, I
at
know.
48 volts. You should try the 12-volt version of yours. It's yeah, it takes two,
There's
basically a forklift.
there's a
So
reason I chose to go 48 volt on my system. But not to get too far in that, but one of the reasons I
so
brought it up was I wonder if it would be of interest to my viewers and sufficient value to Victron and you to have like a quarterly or biannual, hey, tell
usually
me
we
what's new coming.
usually every well the things are announced typically at our what we call our distributors meetings, which is happen twice a year. One during METS, which is the Marine Equipment Trade Show in Amsterdam, which is in November, and then we also will be we also have Intersolar in Europe, which is in Munich this year in May, and so that will be the other. Those are the two typical announced dates where where Matthias and Reinhard will actually showcase what's coming up and what we expect in the next. Typically, it's in about the next 5 quarters, so over a year and a quarter.
A year and a quarter, and
yeah.
So
and that's
going to those. Correct, because we've been talking about a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I know I'm repeating some of my questions. I apologize. I do need ESS in the configuration where I'm using a Cerbo GX to set up time of use, conditional AC to use your.
So no, language. You don't need to put in an ESS assistant.
So I can delete my ESS assistant.
Yeah.
Okay, so
and then you can go and then you can use the ESS. Look at the ESS that's on the Cerbo.
Okay, so I'm going to go through from this point now. What I'm going to do is sort of undo what I did and go through the process again. Do you need a break? I know we've been talking for a long time.
No, go for it.
Okay. Okay, it's highlighted. I hit delete assistant. Oh, now it's gone. Send settings, and I'm assuming it's going to say modified settings.
Yeah.
There are no assistants in the used list. Would you like to erase the assistant setup for the device? Beware, yes. The device will be switched off while the assistants are cleared. Yes. Click, there she goes. Okay, so I have no ESS at this point, meaning... Oh, no, I still set a country code. Do I still have to set a country code for time of use?
I think it just said it clicked out for you.
Okay, so where do I do the...
You can just go back in, and once it clicks on and off, just have a look and see under grid.
Under grid.
Yeah.
It's still set to other, type B.
Okay.
Do I have to have that set in order to do time of use?
No, turn that off.
Okay, and with this back to none, in order to make it possible to enable feeding power into the grid, one must select a country code. Yeah, that's fine.
And you're not doing that. Yeah.
Okay, so I've set this to none. I'm going to say send settings. Okay. Now, with this reset, no ESS, no grid code, there is no way this is going to backfeed into the grid ever. So that condition, that concern is resolved.
That's right. But once again, you still
for code reasons.
For code reasons, you're going to need to have an anti-islanding device in there.
If I'm going to leave this plugged in all the time.
Yeah.
So if you're going to have this plugged in, even if it's a plug cord, you're going to have to check with your electrician to see if... Because it mechanically or electrically has the capacity to push power into the grid, even though the software is configured such that that will never happen. By code, or rather, whoever's watching this and wants to do the same thing, check with your electrician to see if you have to have another anti-island device installed to ensure that you're never going to have a backfeed in order to meet your local codes. So now back to this. So I have set my country code to none. I have deleted my ESS.
Yeah.
I've sent the settings. So with VE configure, I'm done. I've basically reset it.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to now switch this back to the Cerbo GX. Oh, I should probably close this first. Now it's closed. I'm going to unplug this. Should I go to the Cerbo GX, or are we using the VE configure on the Android app?
Nope, use the Cerbo.
Okay, so I'm plugging it into the Cerbo.
Do you have your Cerbo on VRM?
Yes.
Can you share it with me?
Yes, I can, but I have a gripe. I should like to register a complaint.
Okay, I don't know where it's going to go.
There ain't nothing you can do about it.
Hang on a second. Okay, go ahead.
Well played. So my Digital Mermaid, I'm saying this publicly because it's what's linked to my Gmail account. My digitalmermaid@gmail.com address is my main address for everything. And that's what I set up with my VRM. And then I saw, oh, we support two-factor authentication. Great, no problem. Enable 2FA, which uses Google Auth. thought nothing of it. My Pixel 4, which I installed Google Auth on for the first time I started using it, just flat out died. I cannot get it to power up anymore. So I went to log in when my first attempt at this video 2 weeks ago before I got called off. I went to log in and I couldn't log in because it sent me a code. It's like, well, enter your auth code, and I can't turn on my phone. It's dead. So thankfully, I had an active session on one of my computers, and I added my work email address just to make sure I had access to my system.
Yeah.
And great, so I did. And then I sent an email to somebody because I could not find an email address anywhere to ask support a question. It was ask the community. So I assume if I wasn't fortunate enough to happen to have a couple of your personal email addresses, a regular user doesn't have access to support directly.
If you ask in community,
Asking community is the support.
There is, if you're not getting it from if you can't get it from your dealer doesn't know. First of all, the dealer or distributor has access to us.
Yes.
So they should be able to turn around immediately and come to us. But if you ask in the community, you will get, or better thing to do is actually search it in the community.
Fuck.
Because you'll find it's turned off again, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
Better thing to do is search in the community.
Oh, card full.
Pardon? Your
full.
card's full. Okay, change the card.
That's what I'm going to do. This is the first time I have ever filled a card. This is how long I've been trying to get this. I'm saying this now because I've got the screen recording. This is the first time in all of my videos I've managed to fill up an SD card. That's
really?
how long I've been fighting to try to get this working. I'm swapping out my batteries as well.
Okay.
Yeah, this has been shockingly difficult. Now, the problem is, to be fair to Victron, when you're a nerd, you kind of get you get used to an idea, especially I'm a nerd in a different industry. You get used to how you think things should work. So I'm going into setting up this Victron gear from a Linux server administrator's perspective, which might not be fair. Okay, is this recording? Yes, it's recording. Hopefully this card's not full. Oh, gotta put this back on. Sorry, just, you were saying about the support. We can answer that while we're talking here.
Yeah, so support should always, and we...
So use community.
As you know, you were on one of the training, and we've spent a lot of time. I have my Victron training shirt on.
I didn't get a hat or anything from you guys, eh?
What?
You didn't bribe me with shit. I came home with no goodies.
They were all out for you.
I know. The problem was I was so busy setting up the cameras and stuff that by the time everything was done, I was lucky to get the one, like, there was like 2 vegetarian sandwiches and all the hats were gone and everything. Oh, I have to show you. I had to make myself a captain's hat.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Anyways, so...
I'll make sure you get hat. So Victron community is really good. If you search it, chances are if you are asking a question that's already been asked, just search it and you'll find it in there.
I did try searching this one and I couldn't find an answer. But then the answer is post your question.
Yeah, post your question. One of the communities, the community is very active. And like I said, we've said a couple of times, you've got a number of people, Guy Stewart, Matthias, and a bunch of the software guys are always on there. We're on there every now and then, the sales managers, but typically we're usually dealing with support to our dealers and distributors first.
Okay, so to go back to the problem I had, I lost access to my account because my phone wasn't working. If I hadn't had, thankfully, because I had an open session, I could add the second email address, which is my work address, which I can't really keep as my primary address. I sent a message saying, hey, I've lost access to my account because of blah, blah, blah. I explained what happened to my phone. And the gentleman who responded, I won't name him because he was kind of being nice by talking to me, and he was like, "Yeah, we can't reset that." So
It's
basically, my main email
it's
address that I use is dead. I can't use it anymore. There's no way to reset it. Which
so you can, um, yeah, because you can't get in to your phone, right?
no, I can't get in my phone. It literally will not boot. And when I move to a new phone, Google Auth doesn't move. When my phone
Oh,
died, I bought the Pixel 6 because I had a Pixel 4.
yeah,
And I thought, okay, well, it's just going to, it loads all of my stuff for me anyway. Google Auth
right.
didn't transfer. I don't know why it didn't, but it didn't.
Weird. Okay.
I'm
Uh,
sending you an invite, by the way.
okay.
So, yeah, it strikes me as a potentially major problem if somebody has, I mean, especially in the boating world, phones get lost overboard all the time. It's just a fact of owning a boat. You're going to drop your
Yeah.
phone in the water at some point. If you lose your 2FA, which everybody should use, absolutely
Yeah.
everybody should use, to not have a mechanism to validate that you are who you are in order to re-enable an account where the 2FA option was no longer viable strikes me as a pretty major problem. Can you imagine if you were living on a boat and you weren't lucky like me and had an open session so you could add a second account, and you lost your account and you're told, well, that's it, we can't recover it. Can you create a new email address? It's like, well, no, this is the email address I use for everything.
So, yeah,
Let me know if you get the invite, by the way.
I did, but what I want you to do actually is go into users and select me, invite me as a user
Oh yeah, I can do
full,
that.
with full
So
privileges. Then I can really mess up your system.
I trust you.
When you share something like that, so you know, that means that somebody gets a little invitation and it opens the VRM portal, and it lets you see, but they can't do anything. So they can look at your dashboard
A view
and your
only.
advanced,
Yeah.
and it's a view only. So if you invite a user,
Where do I
you
do the
can.
user? I'm looking at the. Do I have to go into a
So
particular installation or do?
installate, yeah, the installation you're using,
Okay, so I go to the
and then
installation
you'll see there should be a pull down menu on the left
on the
hand
left
side,
side. Yeah.
and then it says users.
Am I being this daft? Dashboard
Settings.
advanced. Oh, it's under settings. Okay.
Yep.
Oops. Settings, users. Ah, here we go.
There you go.
Okay, invite user. So yeah, let this be my official feature request. Make some system so that you can authenticate yourself and reset a 2FA, because as of right now, my main email address is no longer usable on
Yeah, I
VRM.
thought there was a recovery in there. I'll have to have a look.
If you wouldn't mind, that would be
Yeah,
for
yeah,
myself, because I would want to. I do want to recover this,
yeah,
but because it's my work email address. What happens if I? Anyways, Lance email address. Vickery.
yeah. We can.
And it's all good for me. And let me be
Yeah,
clear. I know, because I'm so fortunate to have access to people who will, like you, I can talk
yeah.
to. What is the procedure for one of our viewers or one of my viewers who sees this and might find themselves in the same situation someday but doesn't have access to anybody they can personally ask? Having an official way to
They
recover your account would be
they can
wonderful.
go back to their dealer, so who they bought the device from, and request it through them, and it will go up. And there are ways
Oh, there
to.
are ways to do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not easy, and it takes a little bit of time to do it, because of course the way the VRM server is set up.
Somebody has
Uh,
to literally probably go in and modify a
they
database
do.
query.
Yeah.
Yep, I know that.
So
I've been there.
there you go. So it's, but thank
So
you. I will take
there,
that up.
yeah, okay. So my problem was I didn't see that anywhere, and the gentleman I was speaking to, who again was
Yeah.
going out of his way to help me, I want to be very clear on that. I don't no
Yeah.
shade on him at all whatsoever, but he was like, "No, I can't do it." My problem there is that I bought some of my equipment off Amazon back in the early days.
Yeah.
Now, I've since bought from a dealer, so I could email the dealer and say, "I've got this
Yeah.
problem. Could you please push a ticket up and see if they help me?" But
Yeah.
if there was no, like, say for example, someone bought from Amazon or bought a used equipment from eBay, and they don't have a vendor they can go to, could they ask on the community and
We
potentially get
can
some help
actually
there?
you can ask for support through the support page, and put your serial number in.
Okay.
So we track the serial numbers. So you can put your serial number in, and that way we can actually put you in touch with the original
Okay,
seller
so
of the unit.
you would
So
then be put in touch with the original
yeah,
supplier,
so,
reseller, and then through them open up a ticket.
yeah.
Okay,
So here is
so
actually
there
you can
is a
open the
recovery
ticket. You
mechanism.
can actually open the ticket yourself, and it will get passed through the original seller.
Really? Where's
So
the where can you open up
on the
tickets?
support page, you got to go through it a little bit, but it is there.
Support dot Victron Energy.
It's just under.
Oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
not even a valid URL. Sorry,
No,
this whole
you go
call
into
is
the.
becoming very random. I'm gonna have a
It's
really
okay.
fun time editing this shit together.
I I'm sure you are. If you go into the Victron, and then click on the support
Yep.
page, it'll take you through, and it'll send you basically to. It'll ask you to go to your dealer first, and then if you can't get any, if you've got your
I
serial
think I
number,
just found it. If you have your
yeah,
product serial number but are not sure who your distributor is, please click here.
yeah, and then that'll take you in.
Link in the description.
There you go. Perfect. Okay. So, but the, we've been working really hard in the last couple of years to make sure that the dealers and the distributors are much better trained. We know that that was an issue. That's why we've just finished this tour, and that is where we would like main support to come from. Just like when you buy your car, you're actually not talking
You
to
never deal with
Tesla
Honda or Subaru. You're dealing with the dealer.
with the dealer,
Yeah.
right? So
And
that's
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 a side effect of you guys being a lean company. You simply don't have the personnel to do
if
direct support.
if we spent the money on a support, first of all, and your viewers will know this, phone up another support line. You sit on the phone for hours and hours and hours, because it is so heavily used. What we're trying to do is make sure that the dealers can support you really well. Victron is a technical. It's not a
Yeah.
drill. It's not a light bulb. It's a technical
It's a
item.
highly
Uh,
complex system
yeah,
that could potentially kill you if you
yeah,
screw it up. Not to
and
put too fine of a point on it.
and yeah.
Or others
So
worse.
and if you're buying off Amazon, we have I think we have 6 official Amazon resellers. So
Really?
look,
Okay.
yeah. So through the Victron store, there's only 6 dealers in there, and then there are resellers that are available on Victron. But what you send them a note and ask them if they're willing to support you, because if they're
Okay.
not, they're not. If they can't support you, they're not.
An
They're just a
official reseller.
reseller.
But at some point or another, in order to have a product for sale, somewhere along the line, the eBay or Amazon seller bought it from an official distributor. So this comes back to the point you said, which is if you have the serial number.
We know we know where it's come from, and we know
Okay.
where we can
So the
lead you back to
takeaway
get that.
is if you need
Yeah,
help and you can't find your supplier, find your serial number and go to this link
yeah,
and you're back in business, which is,
yeah,
I want to make almost more of a comment to the viewers. One of the personal reasons I chose Victron is because you're not competing on price. You can't. There's so many cheap inverters, chargers out
yeah,
there that you'll never win. So it really means that if somebody's going to go to Victron, they need to be getting all of those extras, and one of them is support and value in their product's resale value.
yeah,
If in order for their product to have resale value, it has to know that whoever buys the used equipment, or people watching this, a lot of people who are DIYers are going to
yeah,
want to buy DIY equipment. There is
yeah,
still a support mechanism available to them. That's kind of one of the big differentiators
yeah,
and why you step up on the price to buy Victron gear. Not to be a
yeah.
salesperson for your kit, but
Thank you.
it's why I chose it
Um,
myself.
yeah, and I mean, used equipment. Always be careful with used equipment.
You don't know how it was
Make sure
abused.
it works. And if
But a lot
you
of the DIYers do it because budget's a very major concern.
yeah, and if you're looking at that, you can yeah, just be leery
Be
of
mindful
used
of
equipment.
physical damage or potential issues with any used equipment. Like you buy a
Yeah,
used car, take it to the mechanic and get it inspected so you don't pop a tie rod on your drive home.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, have a look at that. But I mean, generally speaking, I'll, you know, our equipment, it's got 5-year warranty on it.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, things
and
like they being locked out of your Victron VRM account, that's something that's not really tied to any one particular piece of hardware, and it's not like I can't get support. Like if I get locked out on year 6, none of the hardware I own would be under warranty anymore.
no, but
But you'll still help me, right?
what happens is even on you have purchased. Okay, so the VRM site is an open and free, or it's a free site. It's always going to be free,
Yeah.
and we're always going to support those devices that work into it. And so you have purchased a Cerbo. A Cerbo is one of the devices that talks directly to the VRM. A Global Link, a Venus device. And we have a number of others that if you have bought that, then we will always support you and then the VRM. So if you do somehow get locked out of it, there is, and like I say,
You
I
will help
will
me no
look at that.
matter
I
the
thought there
age of
was
my equipment.
I thought there was a recovery in there, and I'll have a look and find out.
It didn't seem to work for, well, I mean, maybe I'm blind. I fully admit that, and again, this comes back to being one of the downsides. And I say this in this video because a lot of people who are DIYers are very technical.
Yeah,
Is that we have a bit of a bias where we get used to the way things work in whatever our main industry is, and we bring those biases to things that are technical but not related to our way
right.
of doing things. So I was like, okay, well, in the server world, this is how I would do it. And I don't see it the same way on the Victron side, and it doesn't work. Well, shit, it must suck. No, I'm probably just doing something. Yeah, anyways.
Okay, so
Let's
here
get back to this.
we're
You've got
gonna work on
access
your
to my system now. You
yeah,
have
kind of.
full control
Okay,
of
so
my
you
home.
have the Cerbo. Do you have your touch screen with you?
I do indeed. Okay, so I
Okay,
am
so
here.
once again, I'm looking at your VRM here.
Yep. So I go to my menu. I go to TD Quattro. Oh no, I don't do my TD Quattro. This is handled by the Cerbo under settings, if I remember right.
VR2.
Ah, the touchscreen is not very accurate. How do I get menu settings? How many times I try to
Okay,
hit settings and I hit
here we go.
pages
Here
and
we
I
go.
get
I got
thrown
my
back?
my two-factor identification going on here.
Again, anyone watching this, two-factor
Yeah.
authentication is the way to go. My stresses aside. So it has its own ESS. That's why I don't have to use the VE configs VESS.
Yeah. Do you see it in there?
I see the ESS, yes.
Okay. What did you?
ESS, no ESS assistance found. Okay, so much for that idea.
Here. Let's see what I can do.
Remember, whatever you're doing, tell me, because the whole point is for the viewers to be able to reproduce.
Can you see this now?
See what?
What I'm doing?
No.
Hang on a second.
Are you taking control of my screen?
Yeah,
Ah,
maybe.
you did. Okay, there we go.
No, okay, so you might have to set up your ESS assistant on there.
What is DVCC?
Digital. Sorry, voltage and current control.
Okay, digital
Dynamic.
dynamic voltage.
Basically,
and
what it
current
does is
control.
it controls. It allows the Cerbo to control everything.
So you're using the remote on the website.
I'm using right now. That's why I'm staring straight at my screen. Is I'm looking at your. Yeah, I'm on your VRM and I'm using the remote console.
Okay, yeah.
So as I'm scrolling through here, we can look at.
I haven't checked for firmware updates in a while. There probably is a firmware update, isn't there?
There is. That's where I was just going.
So you're going to go to online updates and give her an update?
Yeah.
Once you start this, I might press to update to 248 or 284.
Yeah. There
Dyslexia. Yee.
Isn't this cool?
Okay.
So that's going to take a second there.
While this is taking a second, I'm going to do a quick bio and a
a quick bio. Oh,
You're not
perfect.
nerdly enough yet. Give me 60 seconds.
Yeah,
Obviously, this is being chopped out. Is it still updating? Or is it rebooting? Oh,
yeah,
it's rebooting
it'll be
the servo.
rebooting.
Okay. It gives me enough time to pour a drink.
You've got a hot mic still.
Now, so the takeaway
Like,
message here is anybody who's following this to set up time shifting, as I'm calling it, check for firmware updates before starting.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I think what we should do is let's do Victron Connect. DVCC is, I checked that, distributed voltage and current.
In any case, it's not related to either time shifting or UPS feature, which are my next two topics. So
DVCC you'd use in you can use in an ESS system, and it's actually often used in an ESS
so
system.
what's it used for then?
Because what it does is it takes it makes the system, everything that's connected to a servo or a color controller operates as one unit then. So it says the maximum amount of charge, current, and voltage I can put into this battery bank is X.
Oh, in that way, if there's multiple sources, it balances them.
Yeah, it says, and not all of it doesn't make all of them equal and putting out the same amount, but what it will do is it'll make it so that if you, for example, how many amp hours is your battery?
280.
So in theory, we only want to put 140 amps into it.
It
right?
can do 1C just fine, but yes, 0.5C is ideal.
Yeah, is ideal. So say you had the grid, or maybe you're on your boat, you've got the generator going, you've got solar power going, you've got all these things going, plus you're running your main engine, you have a high output alternator.
Not me.
So you can control all of these things, and what you'll end up doing is the DVCC would look at that and say, okay, you've got an external regulate like a wake speed or an Ecomax, and it'll say, okay, I'm going to only pull so much power from these items, and make sure that the battery is never overcharging or and the correct voltages. So it will make all these different items provide the battery with exactly the energy that it needs, as opposed to letting things just free will.
Where you could overcharge it. Does Victron support any, I'm going to say like ring or clamp amp meters that you can run wires through? So if you've got something like a bog standard, not smart, high output alternator on a diesel motor, can you get a clamp amp meter that will tie into a Cerbo or a Quattro or something and allow it to track how much current is coming from that and adjust accordingly? It doesn't apply to me. It's just something might apply to someone watching.
Not yet. So right now, So right now, if you look at, for example, one of the internally regulated alternators are very, very difficult to control.
Well, that's why I was saying not control, but if I can put a clamp amp meter or a ring amp meter on it, so I can see how much is coming. At least I can react to it.
Yeah. So what you can actually do is you can now put in a smart shunt or BMV 712, and they'll actually act as a power meter instead of a battery monitor. So you can tell it that.
So if I've got a smart shunt 500 amp on my battery.
Yeah, but you can actually turn that. Now you can go into the settings and you can change your battery from a battery monitor to a power meter, and then that will show up in your Cerbo and your GX.
So I could buy one just for the sole purpose of monitoring incoming power.
Yep.
So if I have like a DC power, right? So if I have an alternator or a generator that's dumb or not compatible. I can now get one of these smart shunts, put it on the ground line for the DC output, and tell the Cerbo you're monitoring incoming power here.
Yeah, and so also on the
so basically that's yes to my question about a clamp amp meter, except it's happening through the smart shunt.
So we also have clamp amp meters that you can connect to. They're typically for AC side though, and they integrate with the Multiplus 2s and the Quattro 2s. Okay. So there's an amp meter that goes in. Pardon? That's another upgrade for them. Okay. So there's just a little, it's just got the standard 3.5 mil plug-in in it, and it's just got a clamp-on amp meter for AC, and so you just clamp it around the cable, and then you can actually start to tell. Once again, you can get back to your assistants, and you can use that for telling telling this telling your ESS system what to do, and telling your Quattro or Multi what to do.
Now, I wouldn't need that in the case of a generator. So I'm planning to buy a Fisher Panda 8 kilowatt AC generator for my boat and feed that into input 2 on my Quattro. Because it's going into input 2, it already can monitor the power coming in from the generator and modulate the shore power accordingly.
Yeah, and in fact, if you're buying a Fisher Panda, there's a couple of optional pieces you can buy with it.
Oh, so they've already got. It makes sense. Fisher Panda's pretty big that they can tie into you guys.
And they drop into the VE CAN system.
Oh,
and so you can actually do auto generator start with them.
Okay.
So directly from as soon as they're plugged in.
So you don't need to run the relay.
As soon as they're plugged, yeah, exactly. As soon as you plug into the Cerbo, as soon as you plug the Fisher Panda into the Cerbo, it recognizes the Fisher Panda on the CAN bus system, and so yeah.
Sorry,
woo.
Well,
so yeah, so
sorry,
that's when you can turn off UPS function
that's just
and all that sort of stuff. So, but what I was going to say is, yeah, let me dig a little more with the ESS.
Please.
We were talking about. So the ESS, I'll figure that out a little bit more. And I'll talk to Mark directly, and so that we can keep this consistent. But the conditional AC,
which is now the key point of all this,
which is really, and if you go to Victron Connect and you do your, if you go to the demo library and then choose your inverter, so inverters. So in Victron Connect, you're going to go, when you got it up, it's got deviceless.
On this computer.
Pardon?
I don't know if I have Victron Connect installed. I downloaded it, but I don't know if I installed it. 1 second. Because I set everything up in a VM thinking I could use the true USB encapsulator and it wouldn't work. So I have to set things up again. Victron Connect installer. There it is.
Yeah.
Windows protected your PC. Don't run this. More information. Run anyway.
I think you can run it. I think we're pretty safe.
Listen, I'm trusting you with enough power to light my house on fire. I think I can trust you to run a PC application. Okay, so I'm in the Victron Connect.
Okay, so you can go on the top, on the right side, or sorry, left side. It's got the 3 little lines for and then go to demo library.
Demo library.
And then you can pick inverter chargers.
Inverter charger.
And then we're going to scroll down. Actually, I'm going to maximize that. And then you can scroll down until you get to yours.
Oh, whoa. It's going too fast. 40.
So you're going to be a Quattro 5000 with...
It's a 48 5000. What? Where's the... 48 5070...
And you're looking for the one... 48 5...
I don't see the 2 times 100 on my part number, but I don't see one with...
No, you're not 2 times 100. That's coming. We've already got... See, those are already things that are on the way.
So where do I see mine? Because I'm a Quattro 48 5070-120.
Yeah.
I don't see that in the list. Can I not move? Okay, so it goes really fast on scrolling.
Yeah, I know.
And I can't use my mouse to step through it.
Isn't that lovely?
Quattro 48, 10,000, 15,000, 3,000, 5070 2x100-S. That's not me.
Yeah, it is actually. The 2x100, that means you have two, you've got two 100, you've got two 100 amp transfer switches.
Okay, so it's not on the part number, but this is still the right one.
Yeah, you've got actually, what it is you've got the AC input 1 and AC input 2 are capable of 1,000 amps apiece, as opposed to a 50 amp or 35 amp.
I see.
Pass-through capability. That's
200 amp pass-through capability, 100 per channel or per line.
Yeah.
Okay.
So down there, 48, 5070 times 2 times 100.
2 times 100, 120V.
120 volt.
Yeah.
There you go. And if you click that, it should create that product for you.
Yep, I've got that now.
And then now you've got all those things. So if you had the VE, which you can still add in because you've got an extra socket in there still, you can, if you see on the left-hand side is what's happening and absorption state and what it's doing. That page is what you would see if you had a VE bus Bluetooth dongle.
So should I plug my Quattro into the View? Oh, Bluetooth
Nope.
dongle, not the Mark III.
Yeah. Not the Mark III. You've got your. No, we'll just play on the here on the.
So this is good for the viewers because this is starting from scratch. It's not influenced by how I've configured
right.
things.
So your MK3, and then you can press the cog.
Okay.
And when you press the cog button on the right-hand side,
yeah,
the settings cog, you'll get all your settings will show up.
Yes.
Now, you have to have, in order to do this on the machine, you have to have the MK3
Which
connected. And you have to have gone through Victron training, which you've done.
Which I've done.
Which means you get at this
the
point
magic
it
password.
It would give you the password. So you enter your password, and you'll notice
then I
up
see
here
the screen.
You can see the screen. Yeah,
these are grayed out without the password.
That's right. Actually, it doesn't even let you get there without the password.
Okay.
There's a big sign that says this is anything you do will affect your settings, and you should be trained and know what you're doing, and you accept the responsibility for changing your settings. Okay. So what you see across the settings, what you don't see at the moment because you're in demo mode, is there would be a download icon.
Yes, a little down arrow.
So the X settings download icon, and then our good old floppy disk, and then the 3 dots. The 3 dots.
Brief tangent. Somebody was showing their kid a 3.5-inch floppy, and they said, "Oh, cool! You 3D printed the save button." Children know how to hurt you the worst.
Yeah, I know. It's great leftover.
Sorry, continue.
So the 3 dots gives you product information. It also would allow you to, if you're connected to a real machine, it'll actually allow you to do software firmware upgrades.
Yes, and I think that's how I hit the firmware update on my system when I was playing with this.
So when you update, so here you go, note to consumers, when you update a multi or a quattro, you are going to reset all the settings to a factory default.
Don't do what Maddie did.
That's what Maddie did. Lance has done it a number of times.
Read the warnings. Don't just click OK.
Yeah, but the nice thing is you can get in there, and if you're doing a real one, you've got the you can save that settings. So you can save your settings with the save icon or with the
3D
file.
Yes.
With the floppy disk. So you can save those settings. So I like to call those like the soft settings. So you can save all those. Then
but they're not loaded until you push them up, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you can save those settings. Then you can go in. And even if you, for example, even if you had your ESS and your assistants on this, when you save the system, when you save those settings, it'll keep those. And then you can update your firmware, and then you can go back in and use the download the settings. Now, there's no point in uploading or updating your firmware if your system is up and running and working. Don't do it. If it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah. That's an old school approach to firmware.
Yeah, if you're adding new items that require new software or new firmware, then obviously you're going to have to do that.
But you're going to need a maintenance window because it will lose power during this process.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, especially for you, when you go to commission the boat with all these things on it, you're going to upgrade everything because you'll have solar charge controllers that'll be added and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So you'll want to have the latest update. So when you commission a system, we bring it all up to date. So
then you don't touch it again unless you have a reason to.
That's right.
Or you're specifically setting aside time for updates and maintenances.
That's right. Yeah. And now, so once again, you've got the general, the grid. You'll notice in here that you can't do. There is no grid code. You have to once again. Currently, you have to use VE configure for the grid code. So this is meaning that what we're trying to make sure that happens is people understand that when you add the grid code that we now
You're
lose that failsafe.
potentially hurting other people if you
Yeah,
fuck up.
you've got to know what you're doing. So
And
we
that's
want to make
why
sure
it's
that
not
happens.
supported here, and it will not be supported
Yeah.
here anytime soon.
No, not anytime soon. No, we've got other. We've talked about there's
Yeah.
other things, but really, what we were talking mostly about was the AC input control. And if you go into that, that's conditional AC input control, which is really what you're looking for sort of your. If you think of it as turning your AC input into your generator
Yeah.
and using your batteries more. So what we're trying to do is use the energy that we're creating in our batteries and only relying on the grid when we absolutely need it.
When you absolutely
Um,
need it, or in our particular case, or my particular case, when I know the grid is cheap. So
yeah,
once it hits cheap, go ahead and top up the batteries. But don't
exactly.
use it during the expensive tariff times unless the alternative is losing power.
Yeah. So the thing with AC conditional AC input is you're not going to get the timing on this, right? Because this, don't
Right.
forget that once again we're talking about getting into
And I
your
saw this when I was
this.
digging through it. I could see that I could
Yeah,
trigger it on 10% or 42,
yeah,
43 volts, whatever I set,
yeah,
but I couldn't set the time of day. Because then the thing is, okay, well, it might drain down, and at 6 in the morning, it finally hits the minus 10%, and I've missed my cheap window to
yeah.
recharge. That's why I wanted the time of
Exactly.
day.
So there's what you would typically do is set up your AC input control. In your case, you would probably not be doing it on load so much, although
No,
you might.
I would
But
want that
definitely,
limit there,
yeah.
but
Once the state of charge, so this is where you could connect if the state of charge drops down, because if the state of charge is getting below your cutoff or getting down to your battery BMS cutoff, you want
yeah,
to bring the batteries up regardless of
yeah.
what the grid's doing. So this is where you would set in your minimum cut-ins. So saying,
Oh,
okay,
interesting. The demo's broken.
pardon?
The demo's broken. I was able to set the percentage to 10%. The
Yeah.
voltage is set to 11.75, so it obviously is set up as if it's a 12-volt system, despite the
If
fact.
yeah, if you look at this, it's on the demos. There's some. You'll also
Quirks.
notice if you go into your grid that the on the grid here, your high voltage is 238 volts,
Yeah,
which is way too high for a.
Europe. Yeah. I, I,
Yeah,
I
so
can't change
there's
it in the demo. I set it to 42 volts and it just resets.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, this is a
It's
demo,
a demo.
and
Yeah.
yeah, but there you go. You can get into there and do your conditional AC on
Yeah, and
bases.
that's what I did yesterday when I was setting this up
Yeah,
myself. So that part is set.
yeah. And so then once again with the ESS, I'm gonna like I said before, I'll get a hold of Mark. I'll talk to Mark tomorrow and figure it, because there is I know there is a way to do it on the Cerbo. So
On the
I just
servo.
haven't played with it.
Now, I believe, can you see what I'm doing if I'm controlling the servo?
Yeah, let me just flip into.
Somewhere.
So you've got date and time on the setting on the first page.
But that's just the
That's
local
just
settings.
yeah. That's just what you're.
The
Here we can really mess you up. Let's just set that to.
Vancouver time?
Well, I was thinking Halifax, St. John's time,
St. John's?
Newfoundland time.
That's an hour ahead. No, it's an hour and a half ahead.
Yeah, I
that
know it
definitely
messes
throws
everybody
me
up.
off.
Yeah,
I grew up with CBC. 6 o'clock.
yeah,
6:30 in Newfoundland. Sorry, only Canadians will get that one.
yeah. I know that's good though.
Where
Um,
So I set up time of day charging last night, and you can tell I was
because you had
tired.
an ESS assistant connected
So
into your.
okay, so what I was doing yesterday, I did have to have ESS, and to have
Yeah,
ESS, I had to have a grid code.
yeah,
So the way I did it yesterday, until I talked to this Mark gentleman, because you're not sure how to do the time of day charging now,
it
right?
does. Yeah, without the assistant, you'd have to have the assistant in there.
Okay, so I think for this video, I'll make it
Yeah,
part one, which is using the VE configurator to set up a grid code. I'll talk about the warnings and risks of that.
yeah,
So let me go back into that because I want to find that switch that says never feed back to the grid. as of right now, until I talk to this Mark person, my time of day, which I want to test this week,
Yeah.
um, I need that working. So I want to find that option that says I'm closing this now because now I have to go back to this and it's getting really late. Like,
Yeah.
what time is it? Holy.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, we've been talking for a while. Thank you for your time.
2 hours.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to VE config. I have to put this in now. If it was my terminators that were the problem, as soon as I unplugged this, I heard a relay in the Quattro click. Let me see if I can find it without having to reset it. COM port, auto detect, 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dot, 4. Detected! Okay, so yeah, Terminator. Don't use a Terminator. Don't make my mistake. Target found, retrieving support functions. The reason I'm going to do this is that, depending on what Mark says, some viewers may not want to do it the way he's going to show me. Most probably will. So I want to document video how to do it this way. There are currently no assistants in this device. Thank you for popping that up right away. So I have to go to the grid and I'm going to set it to other. Okay. 5-second delay to make sure you actually read the warning.
Yeah.
Type B versus disabled. This loss of mains LOM detection. Loss of mains, LOM. There you go. Is this where I set it to say type B is safe so it'll never feed back? Last time I went to get my eyes checked about 2 months ago, they go to do the nearsighted. I've been farsighted my entire life. And I'm like, oh no, my nearsight's fine. And they're like, okay, I know, but we're going to do the test anyways. Is this one, number 1 or number 2? Number 1 or 2? And they did it, and I suddenly saw a lot clearer, and I'm like, oh no. And then the lady starts laughing. She was like, welcome to your 40s. I'm like, no. Yeah. She's like, you don't need progressives this time. You will next year. And I started doing this.
Oh no.
The old lady shit. I'm like,
yeah.
Well, at least I'm not. As my ex's grandmother, who was awesome, used to always say, I'm still on the right side of the grass.
Yeah.
Bless her heart, she's not anymore, but there you go. Okay, so grid code is set to other. LOM AC detection is type B safe.
I thought it was on the assistant.
Type A is the strongest form of LOM detection, resulting in the quickest detection time. It requires a low impedance connection to the grid.
Yeah.
Short, well-sized cables. LOM type A will not work with generators. Type B is safe. Has a more soft approach to slightly longer detection time. Type B has been type tested and approved for most multi-grid code combinations. The only combination not yet as far as multiplus Quattro. ICW UK grid code. However, this combination is most likely valid. It has just not been tested yet. So because I've chose other, type B is the only option I have because it literally means untested. Okay, that answers the question I was going to ask you. What is type B?
Sorry, I was playing with this last. So if you add your ESS system in that with that.
Okay, so I have to go to the assistant and add the ESS.
Yeah.
Solar self-consumption, ESS, okay. Start assistant to do the configuration. Okay, there's the configuration. Choose my battery type. Feature request. If I've programmed lithium iron phosphate before, it'd be nice to pre-select that. LifePro 4 with VE bus BMS, nope.
No, you basically got a 2-wire assistant, right? 2-wire BMS.
Right now, I am not.
You don't have any. I'm not even talking about that.
So no, right now my BMS is so totally self-contained. There's no communication out. So when I was doing this before, I think I chose system uses LifePro 4 with other type BMS.
Yep.
And so that's what I chose because I don't. Right now, there's no way for my BMS to talk to your system, and I don't worry about that. It has its own internal. It'll cut off charging if needed. It'll cut off discharge if needed, depending on its own internal capacities. So I'm going to choose next. The battery capacity of the system. Oh, 280 amp hour. Remembered from yesterday.
Yeah, perfect.
Sustain voltage. Sustain voltage. When the batteries are left in deep discharge, no, I want a sustain voltage of 51.2
Yeah.
because that's nominal,
Yeah, and
right?
that's whatever your battery manufacturer is stipulating, right?
Yeah. 3.12 is the good standby voltage. Don't charge it to high up.
Yeah.
This is the dynamic cutoff where 0.005C is set to 52 volts. I think what I did was 2C I set to 40.5 because they the low voltage disconnect is 2.5 volts. Whichever cell hits 2.5
Yeah.
volts, that's where the internal BMS is going to cut it off. So
Right.
2.5 times 16 is 40. So I'm going to set this to 40.5. And assuming that
Yeah.
my batteries are balanced, if they aren't, the BMS comes in and
It's going
saves
to
the
shut
day.
everything down
So
anyways.
I'm
Yeah.
going to set this to 40.5 at 2C, and I'm going to set it to 41.0 for 0.7C. Why is it 2, 0? Oh, right, because it's going high to low. I'm going to set that to 41 and 0.05. I'm going to set them all to 41 volts with the 2C being 40.5.
Yeah.
And that's reasonable based on what we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Inverting is allowed once the voltage rises to 1.25 volts. That's fine. Okay, so just to clarify, the Smart Solar MPPTs are not inverters. They're just straight DC output. There's no AC, so they're not inverters, right?
That's correct.
So I can leave that as no. It was nice because I was guessing all of this yesterday, but with you here, I can actually confirm
Yeah.
it. Relevant VE configure settings are battery capacity 280 amp, power assist unchecked, lithium batteries checked, dynamic current limiter unchecked, and storage mode unchecked. I didn't see options for those, but that's fine.
You can go back in and
How do I
change
edit
those.
this? That was one of my questions. Do I hit load assistant?
Yeah, you have to load the assistant once you're all finished.
Now it's a .vas file. It's a dialog box to open a file.
Hang on a sec. What you actually want to do is you want dynamic current limiting on.
How do I actually see after I've saved it?
Hang on a sec. Dynamic current limiting on. You want to uncheck UPS function. I'm just going through. So general.
I don't know how to see these settings you're talking about.
So in general, go to general.
Okay.
The dynamic current limiter.
Okay.
Check that.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, it was picking up values from other forms in the or other fields in different pages.
Other fields. So
I see.
AC current input, your primary, you want to do you have a remote? Yes, you do. You have a
Cerbo GX.
A Cerbo.
Yeah.
So you want to do that, override by remote.
So that's
on
virtual
the grid.
switch. Do not use virtual switch.
Pardon me?
Sorry, where's this override thing you're asking me to set?
Oh, go to general.
Under general.
Shore limit.
I don't see these options. Oh, AC input 1, overrule by remote. Check to enable.
Yeah.
AC input 2, overrule by remote.
Yeah.
And I've checked dynamic current limiter.
Okay. Now go to the grid.
Go to the grid. I'm on the grid.
And you've got your stuff in there. Down at the bottom, uncheck UPS function.
Oh, so this is something I want to have later on. Can I not do both at the same time?
So UPS function, what you're doing right now, means that...
it makes no sense because it's going to be running on batteries most of the time anyway.
Yeah, but the UPS function also means that when the inverter looks to connect to the grid, it's going to look to connect to basically a perfect sine wave and perfect voltage. So when you uncheck UPS function, it allows you to actually hook onto a grid that isn't performing as well as what you might require.
So like Miami or a generator.
Yeah. Oh, so in your case, if you're running your servers, you might want to leave UPS function on, right?
Yeah, because that's what this is going to do. This is going to actually feed two traditional lead acid UPSs, which then in turn feed a set of cluster servers.
Yeah. So you want to be using the UPS function then.
Okay.
Typically.
Yes. And
in your case, because
in my case,
those servers are very temperamental to
Yes.
frequency and voltage.
Now, they are
So
protected by proper server grade
yeah,
UPSs that will
yeah.
react to distortion on the grid. So this is sort of like a battery power source, again, to shift the
Well, what this does actually is instead of having those UPSs in line, what this would do is it would actually not allow the inverter to hook up to the grid until it had a very stable power source.
which I want.
So
So if the input is distorted,
it won't hook up.
it won't hook up. Okay.
Yeah,
And that's what
yeah.
the
So
UPS function gives me.
yeah,
As opposed to when it's off, it'll hook up as soon as there's power, regardless of how messy it is.
base within reason.
Within reason, yeah.
Yeah. So
And
so
though
when you
that
figure,
within reason is set with the fields above. AC
yeah,
low disconnect, AC high
exactly,
connect, AC low connect, AC high
and you're wide.
disconnect.
Yeah,
And
and so
accept a
that
wide
also,
range. Okay.
so when you get on the boat and you have a generator, you always unclick UPS function because
Right.
generators don't give you.
They are nasty. Well, I mean, I'm hoping the Fisher Panda is better, but for a lot of my viewers may not have that. They may have
Yeah,
just whatever
it,
generator came with their boat or their RV
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah. It's gonna be, yeah.
Messy. Honda
So the
generator in
powers,
your garage. Pull start.
yeah, exactly,
That's not going to
exactly.
be clean.
Yeah. In the inverter side, um, you could put, no, you're running an ESS, so you're not going to have power assist typically.
Power
Uh,
assist is where it can pull from line 2 to make up if line or no, power assist
no
is where
power.
it'll pull from the batteries if the if the demand is greater than the AC input can provide.
That's correct. Yeah,
But in
and
my
you can have
case,
that
I
on
just
if you want.
basically want the AC input as a charger, nothing else. I'm going to run off the batteries most of the time.
Yeah, but the power assist allows you when you have those big loads, if you wanted to start an air conditioner or something.
Okay. Yeah.
So that power assist can be on. The charger,
So
I
I do want the
always,
power assist on then.
yeah,
Okay.
turn the power assist on. You've got lithium batteries
Yes.
configured, and they're not configured for a VE bus BMS, so that's
No.
all good. And you can set your battery voltages in there how you need them.
DC
And then
input low shutdown. Oh, I don't want that to be anything less than 40 because that's
yeah,
DC input low restart. Oh, so how much does it have to come up to before it starts to use it again?
yeah,
Let's set that to. I have to think about this more later, but I'm gonna set it to 42
yeah.
volts for now. D input low pre alarm. I'll set this to 41. Okay. Do not restart after short circuit. VDE 25. Okay, so I'm not worried about that.
Yeah.
Enable
So
AES. What is AES?
AES is automatic energy savings. So when the inverter isn't doing a lot of work, because remember your inverter's always ready to work.
And it's a power expensive device.
Yeah, usually about 25 watts, 25 to 30 watts, depending on what model it is.
Well, in my case,
and
what's the Quattro's wattage draw for its inverter?
I think it's 25 for the 48. Yeah,
Okay.
25 or 32. So yeah, you're drawing half an amp or almost an amp all the time, depending on what model it is. But that allows you to, when there's no load on it, to either go into a square sine wave or actually start the search function. Neither of which I like, so I don't tend to use it.
So when I'm on my boat, this is actually good. This is something I've been pondering a lot lately because I am looking at, because I'm running a 48 volt boat, it's really hard to find 48 volt DC reefers, washing machine. I want to have a little washing machine dryer on there. Possibly an air conditioner. Finding 120 volt devices or devices that'll support 120 volt is way easier than finding things that support 48 volt.
Yeah.
So I've been pondering this. Okay, well, if I run 120 volt stuff, it opens up a whole lot more options to me. But now I'm dealing with the parasitic load of having my inverter on all the time. So this is something that, though it's not related to the time shifting, which was the topic of this video, it is something that I've been thinking a lot about. How do I reduce the parasitic load of the inverter if I'm planning to run an induction cooktop, an electric convection oven, like I'm going full electric across the board. I'm getting rid of my propane tanks, everything. So if I know the problems of having a modified square sine or a modified sine wave or the search mode. In my case, though, for these high draw units that will be running at 120 volt, I wonder if it's worth it to save power in a boat. And it doesn't. Again, it doesn't really
Yeah.
relate to time shifting, because time shifting, in my case of trying to save money by running off the grid when it's cheap and run off the batteries when it's expensive, who cares? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You're not doing that on a boat. But when you're on, I mean, the easiest way to save power with an inverter is to turn it off.
right, and so maybe with an AES, that's something I want to look at
Well, you can.
with my boat, separate from today's
Well,
conversation.
on your Cerbo, you can actually just turn your uh, when you've got it connected, you can actually just turn the Quattro to charger only. In which case, it wouldn't,
Oh yeah, I
because
wouldn't have to climb to the back. I can. I right. So
yeah,
okay.
you just switch it right on the Cerbo.
So I
Or if you
turn it
had
off
a
there, and
digital
I
multi-controller, you
manually
could.
turn it on when I know I'm about to use an AC load,
Yeah,
like cook dinner
yeah,
or do laundry or something.
yeah, yeah.
So in that case,
Exactly,
I can still leave AES off. I don't need to worry about it.
exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Continue.
yeah. Okay, so and then you should be able to go into your start the assistant again. If you go into assistance and just go through that and make sure that it's doing what you want. 280, sustain voltage, change your voltages, your cutoffs, no PV inverter, and then it has all those things that you.
Ah, okay. So if I want to update this, where those it was telling me the summary of everything, I have to go through,
Yeah,
do all of my configurations, then run the assistant, and then load the assistant to get. Okay, I get
yeah,
it.
and then you're going
Send
to send your
settings.
settings.
When would I ever? It always defaults to modified settings. When would I want to send all settings after a firmware update?
All settings. Um, Typically, you do all settings. A lot of times, what you'll do all settings for is when you're using a set of settings that you're porting into a brand new machine. So you've stored a set of settings that you're duplicating,
I see. I see.
and
I see.
so you actually want all the settings sent in, not just what they see as modified. Um, so you're doing an actual as I copy paste sort of thing, right? Where you've got 6 machines and or you're making the same system over and over again. So you just port in all of the settings as opposed to modified. So that way you know that you've transferred the complete file.
Plugged in.
Bing, there you go. Okay, so if you've got that, you should be able to send those assistants to your
Yeah, I
Quattro
just
now.
did. I saw it write all the blocks. I heard it reset. We're done.
Okay, so now you should be able to plug your Cerbo back in.
Okay, so is there a problem of me just unplugging this, because this isn't constantly talking to it, right?
No,
Okay.
just unplug it. Yeah,
I'm still going to close it just to be safe, but that was a question I
yeah.
had. Okay, so going back into the Cerbo. Now I think when I go into ESS, then it gave me the option to set it as I did yesterday.
Yeah, it should. Where's your Quattro?
I think I called it the. Oh, no. I thought I called it the. Has it not found it yet?
No, we might have to do a restart.
Oh my god, I'm an idiot. I plugged it into the Ethernet port.
Oh, there you go.
Good lord. Oh, there it is. TDM Quattro 1.
Okay, perfect. See here, I just switched over here. Here's your AC current limit.
Yep.
So you can
Can I
change that
edit that
around.
now? I see a little pencil icon. No, I can't.
It's grayed out at the moment, so go back to here.
The Quattro is completely unplugged, by the way. I generally leave it. I've got my 2 solar panels now that the snow's finally melted off my roof. You wouldn't know about that in Vancouver. I'm finally getting solar again. I went up there and I tried to scrape it off. There was so much snow on it. I was trying to brush off the bulk of the snow, and I broke my. Oh,
Yep,
sorry.
that's okay.
I'm keeping you from your family. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I was trying to get all the snow off my solar panels and I actually broke my thing. So then I tried to scrape it off and I broke another thing and I'm just like, fuck it, I'll wait for this snow to melt. All right, so it's inverting, so.
Okay, so we've got that on there. Settings. Now let's see what we've done everything right.
Now under ESS, there should be there because I've loaded assistance. There it is.
La da.
Grid metering. Now, one of the things I was reading with LOC is that, or LOM, is that when it realizes there's no input power, when I set the grid code to other and I set the type to type B, when it detects there's no input, a relay opens which physically disconnects the external, the input power, right? The AC in
That's
lines 1 and
correct.
2.
Yeah.
How does it detect when the power's back? If the relay's popped it open and there's no connection anymore, how does it know when to start drawing
Because
power
the
again?
relay, there's still a connection.
Oh, so
It's
it's like a
actually,
bypass just to test the voltage.
yeah, you could actually put a multimeter on there and know if it's, and
Okay.
basically what it's doing is that it's sensing the power before the relay, not after the relay.
Okay, yeah. Now, grid feed in. Is this where you're going to set it to say never ever under any conditions feed back into the grid?
Feed
Nope,
in
that's
limiting
off. DC
active.
coupled PV, those are both off. Feed in limiting active is no.
Yeah.
So because all three of those are off, off, and
Yeah.
no, it'll never feed back into the grid.
Should never feed back in. That's right.
Okay. But for code
Here
reasons,
you can
check with your
change
local
to,
electrician to make sure that you might need still have to have a redundant islanding. Or what did you call it?
anti-islanding device.
Anti-islanding, yes. So you don't feed back and
Scheduled
kill your
charging.
poor electrician working on a telephone pole.
Yeah. So here we can have, this
Okay,
is where
and it
you're going to
remembers
set up.
that from my previous settings.
Yeah.
Now, I found this to be particularly odd. It worked, but it's like, when can I start charging? And then how long can I charge for? So I had to do the mental mathematics to figure out weekdays start charging at 7:15 p.m.
Yeah.
and then charge for 11 and a half hours. So it would end at I can't pull up a calendar. You know, with most scheduling apps, you can say start at this time, end at this time.
Right.
You don't quite have that. I had to actually start at this time and run for n number of hours and minutes, have it stop, and then on the weekend one, I would be like, okay, well, Friday was a weekday, and I said you could start charging at 7:15, and I could run for 11 and a
Right.
half hours. So I had to go in and say on the weekends you can charge from 6:45 for 11 hours and 59 minutes. So there's going to be like a 1 minute disconnect on Saturday morning where it disconnects and then starts the next one. It seemed
Yeah.
a little bit kludgy, awkward to set the
But
schedule.
I would be using the stop at state of charge.
Well,
Right.
it should do stop at state of charge, but let's assume that it doesn't. Like right now, I've only got a 12 kilowatt battery or 10 kilowatt
Yeah.
battery, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I should know I built it. But if I get, so on my boat, for example, or for somebody who's watching this who might be building a really big array, planning to have 63 kilowatts. Hopefully more if I can fit more batteries on my boat.
Right.
So if I'm looking at like 62 to 95 kilowatt, it's entirely feasible that I may not finish charging within the window.
That's true. Yeah.
So in that situation, I want to still have it end on a state of time or a state of charge. So
Yes.
it's right now set to stop at 95%, right?
Yeah.
Let the PV
Well,
carry it rest
if
of the
you
way.
like what I was just doing, here's schedule 2, stopping at 95%. Right.
Yeah, which is fine because I have
Yeah.
solar panels and it'd be nice to let them.
Yeah.
Well, then again, in my particular case, I'm kicking in by 7:15, so the sun's already mostly down at that point, so it's probably not going to matter. So I actually want to charge to 100% in my particular case, but I can
Well,
absolutely see
no, I
some
don't.
viewers who wouldn't want that.
Yeah, but you're lithium, so you don't need to charge to 100%.
So this is a whole other conversation that we're not going to go too much into today because
No.
then the question becomes with traditional lithium ion, like with my Tesla that I just got,
Yeah.
they're saying unless you're going on a road trip, don't charge above 80%.
Yeah.
Because with traditional lithium ion, charging over 80% does a big deal. I mean, you're looking at what, 700 cycles? 700 full cycles on traditional lithium ion to 80% capacity degradation on average.
Right.
With lithium iron phosphate, it's 2,500 uncompressed to hit 80% state
Yep.
discharge. So,
Yep.
one of the big conversations that's been happening in the lithium iron phosphate DIY community is to compress or not compress. I have fallen on the side of don't compress. The reason being that all of the additional complexity and hassle of compression buys me from 2,500 cycles to 3,500 cycles before I hit that 80% degradation. At 2,500 cycles, full charge discharge, that every day, that is 6.5, 7 years. Calendar
Yeah.
aging is going to start to become an issue. And for most people, myself certainly speaking, I can speak for myself, I'm not doing a full charge discharge. Like here at home, I probably won't be completely draining the batteries, but maybe I will. But even then, 6.5
Yeah.
years from now, I'm probably going to want to replace the batteries because battery technology is advancing really fast.
Yeah.
But on a boat where rather on a sailboat, I'm only using this to get in and out of harbors. Maybe on a crossing, which I'll do a few times a year at most, I get caught in the doldrums and I'm going to run her empty. Rare is the time I'm going to do a full cycle. So, with that in mind, I would rather do a full charge to 100% so that I have the maximum capacity so that if there's a major power outage and I'm out of power for 2 or 3 days,
Yeah.
I have as much power ready and standby. You were talking about with Node Red being able to hook into environmental predictions so that you could sit there at like 90% and charge to 100% if it looks like a storm is coming.
Yeah.
That's very, 400.
But on the boat, you're going to find that you'll get, if you use the grid or your generator to charge to somewhere between 80 to 95%, typically
Save
you're
diesel.
going to, pardon?
Save diesel for
Yeah.
the generator.
Yeah. You're typically going to find that the solar will punch
Pop
you
you
up
up
to the
rest of the way.
100. That's
Okay.
typically what happens. And back to your comment about running through the doldrums. If you've got that big of an array, you're probably going to have a fairly decent sized solar panel.
If there's no wind, it's sunny.
Array.
If it's sunny,
Typically-
there's no wind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can, so all those things that what ifs, there's always a what if.
So if
But
somebody's following this
typically-
for a grid power time shifting purely, maybe go to 100%. But if you're on a boat, now suddenly your statement of don't charge
Yeah.
to 100% makes a lot more
Yeah.
sense.
And once again, if this is set up in your house system, you've got solar panels too, right?
I
so
do. Kind of
you know,
shitty
you can-
ones. Not
you
the panels are bad, but my house is badly set up for it. But
yeah, but you can you can get to that 95% and then use the grid to get there as that generator, so you're not using as much. And then
Okay, that makes sense.
yeah, if you once again, there's always the override. Run it a little bit longer if you know it's going to be bad weather. Pump them up to 100%. But if they're not, as we know, lithium's very happy not being at 100%.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And especially
and
with
like you say,
100%,
you're
you
gonna
get that sudden voltage ramp, and it's just,
and we get this nice, yes, in order to get to that 100%, you've got to be going up to equivalent of 14.4 or 14, basically 14.4 equivalency, right? Depending on the size of your bank.
3.65 times 16
Yeah.
math.
So I know that's calculators are for that. But otherwise you're always pushing up, and that top, the battery's very happy not.
You might want to do
So,
that periodically to re-top balance your batteries, but anyways,
absolutely.
yeah.
And if you're, I mean, if as Victron says, as we like to say, if you're cycling your batteries every day, then once a month you want to top it up right up to 100% to
just to
top,
give it a chance to top balance.
Yeah, to top balance and balance all the cells out. But otherwise, if you're not doing that every day, sitting at 75 to
58.4.
to 90.
That's 100%.
58.4. Yeah,
I couldn't do the math.
it's a lot of voltage.
60 volts is you're officially into high voltage category. So I'm sure the 3.65 was not an accident.
Yeah. Well, there's what they call nominal voltage. So any nominal
51.2.
voltage over 50 volts,
Yeah.
you give it. But because even though you're dealing with a battery that is not 48 volts, it is classed as a
51.2.
nominal 48.
Yeah.
But after 60 volts, real, you're high
You're
voltage,
in
and then everything
dangerously
changes.
high. Yeah.
There's everything changes.
When I was
So
looking at electric motors for my boat, I saw several that were available, especially the PMAX that were
yeah,
available much higher voltage, and I'm like, I don't even want to
144
deal with that.
volts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and because of that 60 volt threshold, that's why Victron will stay in that 48 nominal 48 volts. We're not going to go to the higher
Yeah, no,
threshold.
and I think that's true for most people, and that's one of the reasons why I'm like, okay, I'm not going above 48 for exactly that reason. Just everything gets more complicated.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to this.
Yep. So
I've got the schedule I set yesterday is still here in the system.
Yeah. So your ESS should now all be. So I'm just playing around, going past here, and I just set in the state of charge.
So you set the state of charge to 95%, it cuts off, which is fine in my case.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you've got your grid set points. So grid feed in, we did that already. And here you can, here you can limit. I don't know if you can see. Can you actually see my little pointer?
No, I cannot.
Okay.
I can see that you just highlighted limited charge power.
Yeah. So if you click on that, then you've got how much. This is back how much charger power you want. So you're limited, limiting your AC input, right?
So this
here
is
you're
an
only going to charge
alternative to the 15 amp max input that I set because I'm plugged into a traditional NMEA 15.
Yeah.
515p.
So there you can. So if you were doing this, if you were doing this off your generator, you'd set this up for your generator power, right?
Okay. Is there a reason why this exists separate from the max amperage input on the two lines?
Yeah, because in your, I'm just going to turn this off. There we go. I'll click back to you. Yes, because your power assist is related to your AC input.
Oh, the power assist. Okay.
Yeah. So on your power assist, that 2 times power assist means that if you've got that on, that's related to your AC input power. Whereas
this will sum the two inputs regardless.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, depending on don't forget, you're not going to have 2 AC inputs at once. You're going to have one or the other.
I thought the Quattro can pull both at the same time.
Nope. You're going to have a primary one.
Oh.
Because you can't bring 2 AC inputs that are different, because the grid and your generator have no idea what the frequency and the sine
and the
wave
ground.
is working at.
Okay, so
Right, so you always have either or, not both at the same time.
And it'll prioritize line 1 in all cases.
Unless you program it to prioritize line 2.
But by default, it'll prioritize line. Okay.
By default, it's line 1.
So this actually, you just saved me from wasting time, because down in where I've got my server rack, I have 2 20 amp circuits. And I thought I was going to be really clever and run...
get 40 amps out of it?
Yeah.
But you can take your 2 20 amp circuits and combine them and put them into the Cerbo, because your 2 20 amp circuits...
Greg, you're not watching this. Greg's my electrician.
Yeah, because your 20 amp circuits are provided... Well, you got to be careful. Provided they're the same 120 volt, right?
Yeah, I think they're side by side in the breaker panel. So they're probably, because in the breaker panel on the same size, they're out of phase, right?
Yeah. So yeah, be careful with that.
Okay, so I just won't do that.
Because you'd be putting 240 volts into them, right? That's not
Holy shit! Right. Oh my god, dude, you probably just saved me from a major mistake.
Are you going?
I'm sorry, I'm taking like 3 hours of your time.
No,
now.
I'm gonna cut you off in 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. My as my father would say, my tonsils are yelling anchors away. So I'm good.
Okay, let me. Soon. So in closing up, let me talk to Mark a little bit more, and
okay,
we can sort of. You've got general basis. You can I think you're going to spend the next couple days editing anyways.
At least, so it'll be next week before I'm in a position to yammer with somebody. But I would love to talk because I mean, look, this was supposed to be a brief conversation about time shifting,
okay.
and it's been 3 hours, and there was a lot of things we had to put a cap on because I could talk for hours.
Yeah.
And again,
okay.
Not even on the camera, just thank you, like huge,
you're welcome.
Huge thank you. Like there's, yeah.
That's fun.
So just to finish up,
this is a good part of my job.
I'm glad. It makes me happy to hear. So at this point in time, it looks like everything is set up properly for time shifting. I will never feed back into the grid, all caveats having previously been said. I've got a good setup. Later, when I talk to Mark, I may have an option I can learn about to do time shifting without VE configure. But for now, this is how to do it.
You got to have the ESS on there first. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So that the Quattro knows what to do, or the multi, depending on what you're using.
Well, in my case, Quattro, but yeah, Quattro and multi
could be a multi,
for all programmers'
could be a multi
perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, could be any of those that have the same topography. So the Easy Solar, if you're getting into that, and all those charger inverters. So.
Okay, so. Yeah, so anybody buying this class of equipment, Quattros, Multis, this applies to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome.
Have a great
week.
You as well. Enjoy being home.
Yeah.
As somebody who travels a lot for work, I know how so nice it is to be like, I'm going to be home for more than a week.
Yeah, I know. At first I had a couple other things, and I sort of phoned them and said, "Do you really? May I, please? I don't really feel I need to just be home for a little while."
I hear my family are lovely people. I'd like to get to know them.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I know. It's like I was wondering if I was going to have be on the back of the milk carton, missing father, husband.
Yeah.
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Yeah. Last seen in a blue truck.
Yeah, exactly. Heading across the country, east. Yeah.
All right. Thank you again.
Lovely
I'm sure we'll talk again soon. I'll look forward to chatting with Mark. You have yourself a great one.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks, Maddie. See you later.